We don't have an agenda for this special meeting, but we will open the meeting as always, and we usually start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you'd like to join me for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. Thank you. And as customary, we will have our public comment portion of this open meeting at this time.
There's no agenda?
There's no agenda.
This is not the regular meeting.
This is not the regular meeting. The regular meeting will begin at 7. This is a special meeting.
But it has no agenda.
Correct.
They can ask them.
We did a special meeting notice for it. You'll recall years ago, we had an attorney who advised us that meeting agendas weren't required. It's nice and it's a roadmap. This is a very short special meeting, so we did not, you did one where we have the open session, having public comment. Is there any public comment at this time? Okay.
Well, if you don't want, I mean,
Yes.
no.
Okay. All right, thank you. So we are here today, board, to come together to discuss a memo that had been provided to us by Attorney Thal. And I will move that the township board convene in closed session under 8 subsection L subsection H of the Open Meeting Act to consider material exempt from disclosure by state statute. Section 13 LG of the Freedom of Information Act, being a letter from its attorney dated April 12th, 2023, for the reason that the letter is exempt from disclosure under state law due to attorney-client privilege.
I'll second.
Right. Is there any discussion?
Statement, please. The board is considering spending taxpayer monies to go into closed session with the township attorney regarding the town. You hear me? The board is considering spending taxpayer monies to go into closed session with the township attorney regarding a topic I feel should be discussed in public. The intent of the Open Meetings Act is to push the deliberation and decision-making of public bodies into the full view of the people they serve. As elected representatives, we should always strive to be inclusive and transparent in our work on behalf of Salem Township residents, and be willing to justify our actions and the decisions we make in the care of public affairs and monies. For these reasons, I do not support going into closed session for the topic being proposed for discussion today.
Thank you. Eric?
I went through the Michigan Opens Meeting Act, and looked for the reasons we're going into closed session. And I didn't really see anything in there that applied to what it is I think we're going into closed session. To me, it looked like we wanted to go into closed session because we were going to discuss policies on accessing township facilities. And that's not a reason to go into closed session. The only thing in there that I've been asking Ron, Kathy to talk to you, why we're doing this, I can't figure out why we're trying to go into closed session. And the only thing in there was that maybe we're looking at criticizing somebody's actions. It's something that they did, and we want to be critical of those actions. And we want to do that in closed session, but the person that we're being critical of has the right through the act, whether or not they want it to be in closed session or not. Right. And so I'm making an assumption here that this has something to do with Amanda. And if Amanda says she doesn't want to be in closed session to discuss it, then I don't see any other reason why we are going into closed session. Now, Rob, if you want to.
Well, all I would say is, that there's potential liability issues. It's the only reason that I would say the word's closed session. Otherwise, I think, you're correct. But I think that without saying it over, that there's potential liability that arise, like if you close session. But ultimately, you know, you guys vote, we have to have 2/3 vote to go into closed session, which is 4 out of 5. And so if you don't vote for the closed session, then you have to decide if you want to stop about it.
And I think, and I get what you're saying, I think in the past we have discussed, but that feels like that's a different permissible reason to go into closed session to discipline somebody, and I don't think that's the intent here today. It was to discuss a privilege memo that came from the attorney. So I want to reiterate that was my understanding. It's not, to attack anyone. Just to clarify some policies and things that we need to do. Any comments? All right. We need a roll call vote, probably, since it's 2/3.
Yep.
So the motion is here by me, supported by Rod.
Roll call vote. Kennedy,
Yes.
Imke, no. Branham,
Yes.
Schulte, yes. Hoset,
No.
Okay, right.
So I guess the next question is probably will waive the attorney-client privilege of the right. So you can vote on that, and then you can discuss it if you want to. I'll waive privilege if you privilege.
Okay,
I'll move to await privilege. Memo.
Second that.
all right, is there any discussion on that? That makes me a little bit nervous, I have to say. I feel like attorney-client privilege is there for a reason, but if the attorney feels it's, you know, I mean,
Well, it's up to you, but do that, but I mean,
right.
if you don't, then we just won't talk about it. You know what I mean?
Well, and that's tough. I think there's gonna be fruitful things that will come out of this, so, any other comments on that motion? Should we roll call that as well?
Branham,
No.
Hoset,
Yes.
Kennedy,
Yes,
Imke. Yes. Schulte,
So let me understand what we're voting on here. We're voting, what are we voting?
To waive the privilege of no,
oh,
so yes means the privilege of the waived. We can talk about it in the open session.
No.
so that's 3 no's. What was the count again? 3 to 2, 3 no's.
Yes.
3 yeses, I'm sorry, 3 yeses to 2 no's, okay. Is that 2/3 also, or is that just sufficient to pass? Okay, here, yeah, I'm sorry, here's your copy. And here, let me, make sure the board all has a copy. It's not in your board packet because it's not. That's it, now that you could.
Thank you.
You got it? Okay. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, and we can make another copy. Okay, same copy, here together. Okay.
Or if you want, I can just start go through it. So, you know, it came to my attention, that the township clerk had provided unauthorized after-hours access to non-employee and non-agent of the township. Robert,
Can you just give me a definition of unauthorized access? What specifically that means?
so if you're gonna have other people in the township hall, they're gonna have to be authorized. My understanding is this person's assisting doing some type of function. I don't know what that function is. That's what we need to discuss, I think, but you can't just have a volunteer come in and help. Okay, that's not, the board has to authorize anybody who's doing any work within the township. So it's not, you just can't say, oh, I'm gonna bring in someone to help me do this job, or help me look through this or look at that. Anybody who comes in office has to be authorized by the board. So when I say unauthorized, my understanding was this person was doing some type of work, and I mean, I had to clarify what that person was doing.
Well, so, okay, so is that illegal by state law?
Well, it's. I mean, it's hard to say that it's illegal,
Okay, so it may or may not be legal. If there's no,
but the board, you can't have somebody in here who's not. Well, and that's one of the things we want to talk about.
Right.
It's the policy.
if the policy doesn't exist,
It's not the, the intent is not to attack.
Right.
The intent is to address issues like, okay, with the general understanding that we can't have. Politics and assist without the board having the policy.
then should that be a formal board vote?
Yeah, you should have a policy on when you're going to policies, like. You know, if you don't say you don't like what the CPAs do, right, you don't like the accountant, you think you do a terrible job, you bring somebody else in. To look at stuff and kind of go through it, you come up with something different. You can't just have other people coming in to access township records, right? Yeah, I mean, this one.
That's, something to bring that up this evening, because about a week and a half ago, the accountant brought her sister in to do the cash receipt on the computers. Supervisor Kennedy was in the room with her, had a discussion with her, no problem. My concern is that we were picking and choosing. That if we have somebody helping who maybe has some difficult questions for us and are challenging us in some ways, then we have a problem. Then that's an unauthorized agent. But if the accountant wants to bring her sister and brought in her daughter one time to help her file her paperwork and work on the computer, that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, if they're not employees of that business, then you shouldn't be. Like, if you hire a business to come in and do something, only the people who are, that we hire should be
Right.
coming in
Right.
and access.
But why then are we having this discussion where that's okay and that, and her sister came in after a resident offered to help me understand our accounting software, and that was.
But the sister is an employee of Haynes Accounting. So she is an employee of
But
Haynes.
the main point is that, when you bring up a good point, is that you do want to make sure that things are done. And so ultimately, we should have some policies on it. Policies on office access, policies on computer access, all, you know, and we're policy driven. So the things that we have a lot of policies, you know,
Right.
but you need to read those policies up so that things are done in a fair manner, so that we don't get some treaty here. And, you know, a good policy of how to do them. So that's really, it's not to attack any individual about it, it's more, I think there's some security issues that you need to address. And, you know, this isn't uncommon, I mean, we do policies, reports on these things, the same types of things, made in turn. You know, in terms of who has access to the SNA software. And we actually develop who does have access to it. You have a policy that says these people have right real access. These people have right access to the computer systems or the SNA software. So we develop policies to address these things to make sure that there's not problems or unauthorized access.
So in my former work life, we were never to give out a user ID and password. That was the policy. You just don't do that. But if I've got somebody sitting next to me and I'm asking them for help,
If you need help to do your job, then you should come to the board and say, I need some help. And then the board can authorize that person who wants to help you, to help you.
And so the way that this played out was that we were in a budget hearing, and this resident had a lot to say about our processes. And the board was very welcoming of her comments and her thoughts. And I said, you know, maybe we should consider hiring her to help us with some of the things that we're trying to do. She said, well, I've already offered to volunteer my time. There was no objections to that in the meeting, none from anyone. So I go with that and I say, great, this is wonderful. I have somebody that's willing to help me understand our software. And so my concern is that from that to end up here instead of why was I not involved in this conversation? To where maybe we would have authorized this resident to assist me. Instead of here, where now I am being accused of unauthorized access. My concern is that we went from that meeting and the kind of conversation we had to this memo. That feels completely inappropriate to me, absolutely non-collaborative.
Well, and if I may, after that meeting, we stood at the window and Sandy told me that she had been in over the weekend with you and looking at things. So I didn't know that at that time. So that had already transpired before the budget meeting. And it's true, when she was sitting there, I'm a type of person, sometimes it takes me, I want to think about things a little bit. When she was here and speaking, the accountant wasn't here. I don't do that job anymore. But, the more I think about it, we have clean audits. We have, an audit coming up. We've got an accountant. So if there are concerns, maybe we can address them that way instead of, we didn't have the accountant here. And so, I didn't object at that meeting, but that didn't mean that the vote had come. I would have said, yes, I wanted her to be here.
Right.
So so I just want to clarify that whether or not I objected when she was here, I feel is immaterial, and that conversation he had there was that she had already been in over the weekend, which I didn't know. And when I mentioned it, some people around said, hey, is that legal? And I said, I don't know.
Right,
So,
I could have been brought into that conversation with the attorney at that point, instead of from that to this. That feels very.
well, and I feel like Mr. Thal was very clear in his memo a couple times that this is not accusatory of anybody. It's not to point out, it's just that when we see weaknesses that are in our organization, we can strengthen with policies, we should do that. And so I want to make sure that I don't have any bad feelings about this with you. This is an opportunity for us to do better. So I just want to say that I feel badly if you feel attacked. I don't think that's the intention here. It's not my intention. It purpled up to the attorney and he had recommendations. I think we should take those recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a huge discussion, really. I mean, it's a matter of,
Yeah, so just the unauthorized access. So I think I understand the definition of that. The next paragraph deals with freedom of information.
Yes.
And, 30 years ago, when people wanted information from governments just say, no, I'm not giving it to you. So we developed this whole process called the Freedom of Information Act. And now what this is saying is, we're not telling anybody anything unless they file a paperwork. That's the way I interpret this memo. I'm saying we completely flipped the thing upside down. We want to provide information to people. We don't want to make them have to provide paperwork to us so we can provide paperwork to them.
well, I understand 100% where you're coming from. And it's not to make it more difficult, it's to make it an equal process for everybody.
Okay, that's
And,
fair.
and so what you do is you have to, it has to be through a court request. Now, it can, whatever policy you have, I mean, you can give somebody, your policy can say, if it's less than X number of pages, you just give it to them. So, you don't have to charge for everything. You don't, those are part of a policy, but everybody has to be treated the same under FOIA. So when they ask for a document, it's like, okay, well, here's what you need to fill out. So, I mean, it's not just,
So if somebody says, I'm showing the township's administrative procedure on this, I have to tell them, you gotta fill out a FOIA request? That seems kind of,
yeah, I mean, if they want it, yes, and it's a paper trail too, because I don't want somebody else coming back and saying, hey, I made a FOIA request and you didn't fill it either. So you always have a record of what people have asked for and what you gave them.
So,
And it's,
question. Are you familiar with policy admin 2022 that was passed on February 7th of 2023?
I think, is that the one that we're still working on? And I don't think,
No, we
Oh.
passed it. It's the assessing records policy.
assessing
no, I
records
didn't.
So that was
policy.
passed on February 7th of 2023, and it states that it says, request for documents, you have to get to the end of the reading. Requests for documents can be made directly to the assessing department via email and telephone. We will allow up to 7 business days for information requests to be fulfilled. Depending on the scope of the request, a FOIA request may be required. not must, may. Fees for copies. There is no fee to obtain copies of record cards in the township office. All of the documents, depending on the scope, may be subject to waivers determined by the township board. So again, here we have just a month before, so. Pardon?
I don't like the policy.
We passed the policy the month before this, and we said, these kinds of records you don't need a FOIA for, and you don't need to pay them.
The problem with the policy though is saying may. Now, so where do you determine when it does and when do you determine it doesn't?
Yeah,
You can't work with the policy.
No, we had a resident come in on the 19th of April, and he came into the assessing department, he wanted some information on a neighboring parcel because he wants to buy it.
Mhm.
And so the assessor gave him 10 copies at no fee, which I think is fine and great, but we can't out of one side of our mouth say that this is okay, but this is not.
Right, but what we do under the policy says that maybe a FOIA.
No, I agree, no, what I'm saying is this policy, I agree,
I know.
that policy was filed, but we can't then
That's-
say that it must be.
Right, that's why I wanted to talk about a FOIA policy. And these things, it only takes like 5 minutes at the most probably to fill out this FOIA sheet to ask for a document. You can have a policy that says you can have whatever, a lot of places will set, if you ask for this many pages or less, it's free. Or something like that.
Right.
You can have a policy like that, but you have to have a policy that is administered uniformly.
Right, we have guidance from the
Yeah.
Attorney General, and we have the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act statute.
Right.
We as clerks are given that guidance.
And I just. You can see the problem with that policy, in that there's not a clear, who makes a decision of when a FOIA is required. And that's what gets townships in trouble, when, so-and-so didn't have to FOIA, so-and-so didn't have to FOIA.
But
Or-
we were given certain information to generate the decision you made in this memo without allowing me to be there to actually weigh in and give you more facts. And
Right.
that's
Well, I mean, that's what you're giving me now is more facts, but the policies that I'm recommending are still the same.
I agree,
right,
I understand.
right.
That's why I don't look at it, I don't see it as the tech on you. You may feel that way, right? But I don't see it, I see it as things that need to be corrected in policies of the board.
It's the process of
Yeah.
what we got.
I can understand that. And so, I think that you need to look at your FOIA policy and make sure it reflects what you want, but everybody shouldn't be going through that. So you have a record of who asked for what they received, and there's no issues there. Because you can have issues where people say they didn't receive,
Right.
they asked for something to receive it, that it was, considered a FOIA and you didn't fill it.
Well, and I know that as Kathy had said, that the current FOIA policy we have followed the NTO guidance. That's where you had taken that policy.
Originally, it was a few years ago, and I think I had sent it to Rod.
Did look at it. And there's some revisions that I would make to what you're talking about, because some of it does not, some of it is different than MGA's. And it was a different statute that we need to put that in. But overall, you need to make a decision on what you really want charges for, and what what you just give out without.
Do I remember that we had to have, there's like a different, that there's like a coming in and looking at our books, and then a separate one for looking at the assessor's records. I feel like we have different, that there's a different set of circumstances or something. Maybe I'm not remembering that right. But I don't have, I think I have no idea what my policy.
Well,
is.
but the policy, I was saying that sometimes FOIA is required and sometimes FOIA isn't. It's an unworkable
Right,
thing, because
right,
it shall be administered by the FOIA administrator or the FOIA administrator's designee. Then they determine, what how it's processed.
So we need to have. If somebody wants something that's 4 or 5 pages and everything, we don't charge. If it's over that, then you charge them X number of cents.
And you can only charge for searches and redaction and other things if it's unduly burdensome.
right.
And that has to be identified.
Yeah,
It's being
otherwise
charged
you
general
can't.
service.
Right, otherwise you can't charge for it.
Right.
And that was what I tried to explain in the last book.
Yeah. No, and that's,
And some things that are online, you don't charge for that, or, you know, I just tell people that, you know, where to find. them.
Right, normal
Right.
processes.
Technology allows us to do things like
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that that's online.
that. Search.
Right. But
What
some
else?
things are, and then other things aren't, you know, you can get FOIA as a team.
Right, well, no, I
Yeah.
think I discussed that with them, every single election, you
Yeah.
sent email.
Right.
Yeah.
That took me 3 hours to even go
Yeah.
through that.
There's some,
And then they
you know,
just-
some emails, you know, or some FOIAs, you know, the costs are thousands of dollars to try to do it. Right, and, you know, so in those kinds of circumstances.
But I feel like the Attorney General's guidance has given us some parameters for where we think, you know, where we can make those decisions, and I know that we can also set what is an unreasonably high cost, that is a
Right.
decision. we can make.
Yeah, you're right. And I guarantee you the Attorney General charge is probably for everything. They do ask them for. I don't think they probably have anything down. Other than guidance folks or something. But if you were to ask them for, you go through the state. You would have FOIA request. But yeah, no, you know, you get leeway in how you administer it. With those types of things, how much we charge for what would be considered unduly burdensome.
And I want to send a message to my residents that says, we want to be transparent, we want to provide you the documents. It's my job as the township clerk, and I'm a statutory employee, and to use the general operating funds to provide some of this. That feels like we are being responsible to our residents.
Right.
Right.
It's just, and to do that, you have to put in policies that
Right.
will be uniformly administered.
Right,
Exactly.
So if somebody asks you for a real difficult FOIA
yes.
and you don't like that person.
Right.
And somebody you like asks you for the same kind of difficult FOIA, you get treated exactly the same. You know, so that's all policy driven. And
Right.
you get policies on FOIA, they need to be revised. But it should reflect what you want too. You know, not just you pay for every copy. You know, if you have a certain threshold or what you consider unduly burdensome, how many hours before you consider it burdensome. You could set it in what you do.
So it sounds like we need a new FOIA policy, and then to make sure that it dovetails with any other existing policies, such as this assessor one that's there as well, to make sure that it's consistent.
Yeah, no, yeah, and there might be some, you know, I think the state has certain requirements for assessing records to go online. And so that may make it, so people can just access it
Yeah,
without going through it. I don't know if you use BSNA for your,
we do.
and so people can they go online and just.
We're set, the sheet captain's working on that right now, it's set up, if it's not live right now,
I think we have close to getting
so.
I think you can only.
We do,
access-
state law now, we're gonna have to do it, we have to provide at least a way for people to search their own parcel, and then if you wanna search someone else's, then it's. Okay, but I guess what I'm saying now is that it's through BSNA. Not, yeah, you can do it for the county right now, but what I'm saying is there's also a new requirement where on our website, people have to be able to go in and you will be able to look at your own for free. And then I believe there's a fee that would be associated with looking at any of the parcels, the sheets.
And I don't think the county actually would pay out like, the county gets your tax information, like, but I don't know necessarily if you have like the record.
They provide the record part of that. That's sort of
I don't think they would, but they would give all
The
the
tax-
taxes value, assessed value, they have a lot of information
Right.
there, so I don't get
It's
the tax.
different than ours.
you know, additional.
Yeah.
Yes.
So at some point, she said we were going to stop charging.
That's only if we paid an additional fee in the township.
So you're right, there's BSNA is normally set up as either some places will just have free service. You can get on there.
Right.
$1,000.
Other places will have a little dollar sign and you can see your own property for free. And if you want to look at other properties, you can say more. So that's where a lot of municipalities are like that, or it's just. free
Catherine
service.
recommended it because it saves her time.
Right, yeah.
I'm sorry, what?
Catherine recommended that we pay that fee for people that see any property because it saves her time.
For sure.
You can just-
Yeah.
Right.
Right, that's gonna be really nice and I think that's.
Well, when I was looking to buy a house in Sylvan Township, every other community, it was free. But I had to pay for Sylvan Township. Which I think is really small, that we should allow people to look up property.
Okay. All right. So Scott, I see your hand, but our public comment portion of the meeting is over right now, so we're.
We have
Okay, so,
I have a question regarding FOIA for.
well, I can't, we need to stay on task with this. I understand it's for the attorney, Scott, it's a public comment at this point, we have to move on. Thank you. All right, so,
So I think the things we're looking at are, facilities policy. Computer access policy. Which I think is a really good idea, is who has access to what computers, what software systems. Who has maybe read access only, who has write access. To make sure that's all, handled properly, and it's not an unusual thing to have, is policies on those items. You know, so those are the, and then really shore up our FOIA policy, so it reflects what we want to do as a board. And there's some corrections I think have to be made to it, no matter what, but then there's other things that are more optional as to how you can, like, when citing certain questions. So, you know, those would be the main things that, it's really more idea to talk about.
So here's an example, the contractor called me after hours, and he wanted access to township policies, mechanisms, and boards. So I had him here after hours and let him in. Now, you know, we didn't have an official board vote, right? But Rod had been working on that for quite some time.
It's a
So
project.
how official do you?
Well, if it's a township contract, you're right.
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah, I mean, if it's something like that, the board has.
Sort of,
said, I
yeah.
want quotes or.
we already approved that quote, I think, by the time you had them come out, right?
Without vote. I mean,
But then, like, you know, the policy on facility access, like, who should be the person to bring that person into the township,
Right.
you know?
I mean, we have troopers that come back and forth all night long, they bring families with them sometimes, because I've already been a lot, they walk right through.
Well, that's a different, I mean, I don't know what kind of contract we have with them, you know, as to what they do. But you should, you know, as a facility, keep certain goals on it. And, you know, they can come in, but, you know, I would get them access to their offices. With it. Yeah. But those are things that would go into the policy, so I don't know how you wanna go about working on a policy, like who, you know, policy, maybe, you know, two or something, that we could work on policies, all those things. I can get to sample policies, and then you can kind of make revisions off those samples. But they go to the whole township board. I mean, we could do that, so everybody has you know, a look at it, and we can make comments back.
Well, I would really like to see us move to a point where we have some work sessions on this and we don't drag our residents through these.
Right.
These discussions that are, we have a very good agenda.
Right.
Sitting down 3 hours.
No, I think
It's not important, it's important that we have these policies in place.
No, I'm not
You
saying
know,
it's not important, I'm saying
Yeah.
if we had work sessions
Right.
as a board
Right.
outside of a regular meeting, then we could come to the board much more prepared and actually do more things.
Yeah,
right.
Residents have waited through this with us.
It's a, right, you don't wanna sit there and work through the policy.
No.
At a regular board. A work session makes a lot more sense to sit down, you know, I can give you sample policies. You can go over them and, you know, it's a good, you know, a meeting, you know, but it's a work session.
Right, right.
I
And the
think
work
that's-
session, just to clarify, it's still a special meeting. It doesn't really mean anything. It may be sort of in terms that there's not going to be a vote taken, but a lot of times I hear people saying work session versus special meeting versus this, and they're all special meetings.
Right.
So the residents would still be here, and people who want to select the room as well, and it'll be the same. But I do understand, we have enough things going on in this township that we certainly could have our business meeting, and then 2 weeks later, a work session. And if we find in a month we don't have that much stuff, then we can cancel a work session, but I think we're looking at policies, we're looking at, in our next meeting, some discussion about commissions, I think we were saying maybe would be good for a work session. We gotta have a work session on ARPA funds. So definitely a work session, in maybe in 2 weeks, where we can, work through some of this.
A lot of times work sessions might be in the daytime, so during normal work hours. Depending if all the board members do something. They don't always have to do anything.
Right.
So if we have a policy and I just decide that I'm just gonna blatantly disregard it. What are the ramifications? I'm an elected official, so you're gonna have a recall or or am I legally at risk or
Well-
am I?
There's liability issues. Is one of the reasons that we do policies is for liability. But, so there could be liability from somebody suing the township for a violation of policy. There's very little with an elected official that you can actually do, because you're elected officials. So you're elected, people can, petition to recall you, that does happen once in a while. If a board wants to, they could pass an ethics ordinance, when you have a really dysfunctional, board, sometimes they'll pass an ethics ordinance. And then you could be in violation of the ordinance, for violating the policy, and they can actually, cite you. It's a civil infraction. So we do different things, you just hope that everybody's responsible, and then, once you're aware of a policy, you should follow. It's just, but, somebody doesn't, or an elected official, it's difficult.
All right, so we're looking at 3 policies that may, should be coming out of this housing board. So we'll just have these at a work session here in a couple weeks, or do you want to set a work session? Or do people want to look at their calendars and get back to me on a date on that? Okay,
And it sounds like Rob is going to provide you with some examples.
I think if that's,
Whole board, this is like-
yeah, the board wants everybody to get them, and yeah, we can send it to the whole board, send it, I'll send it to everyone. And then we can, oh yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah. And I don't know what your policy necessarily is, I'm trying to get the attorney, so I can say, just send me questions, and know what your policy is,
we
but.
just changed it, actually, anybody on the board is authorized to contact you, the PC chair, the ZBA, I think we requested that the supervisor be copied on it, unless it's something regarding the supervisor.
So what you guys do is just make sure, like, if I send out to everybody, you don't respond to all. Because you can't have online discussions, because you have to be at a board. So if you want to ask me a question, it's fine, but don't copy everybody, and then I'll respond back to you. Not everybody. Yeah, but you have to avoid any kind of discussion online, because that's violation.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Is there any other, let's see. The second, this one, second way to access, so will that would be covered under,
Facilities access, so it's facilities access, electronic access. I don't know that you have an email policy or anything.
we do, but it's old and you.
I'd like to see a copy of that, because
Okay.
normally I do that all in one thing.
Okay.
With the email policy, because you always have to have an email policy that will tell people and employees that the township emails are not private.
Right.
It's for themselves.
Right,
Anything that they do on the township computers or email are open to review by the township. So you normally do the policy that says that. Yeah. And, part of that policy would also talk about securing computers, passwords, things of that sort.
Okay, it's kind of lengthy, so I'll send it to you though, what we have, because you's probably rushing up to.
Or Mike would just.
So
That would
it's-
address that second paragraph, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Out of accessory use, office.
Yeah, well, that's gonna be facility access. So you would also, so it's facilities access, computer access, and, for cleaning purposes.
And then ethics.
Well, we even talked about that, like, I mean, it's a whole different, ethics. You can look at doing something like that if you
Well,
or even ethics policies, but ethics policies don't really get into that. So I don't know if that's something that you're interested in seeing.
I have a question for you. Remember when Kathy brought this list of, and I can't remember what it was called, it was a list of things that all the elected officials would,
Rules of engagement, I think it was called, that was from MTA.
It's a number of different things for the forum.
Yeah,
so we passed that for the board, but I am wondering if we can have that for everybody who works here and everybody who's on the boards and commissions.
So that's an ethics policy is good for employees and non-elected officials, because you can take action on ethics policy with other people other than the elected officials. So you might want to take a look at an ethics policy. I do a lot of presentations on ethics policies and ordinances and stuff for MTA. So I mean, it's something certainly, if you're interested in that, you could, it gets you like an ethics policy.
Absolutely, because if we as the board said that we're gonna try to do all of these things, I don't think we should leave everybody else behind. We all sort of need to be on the page where we're thinking of working with each other as team members. And to me, that just seems like a one of a billion steps that you take toward getting there.
I don't know how other board members feel about it.
I mean, yeah, I would be interested in just seeing what it would say, I mean, I don't know, yeah. Yeah. Like I said, be interested just to see what one would say, and I appreciate and agree with what Sandy's saying, so I'd have to look at it to see whether I feel like it was, appropriate. We hope that everyone is working for the township for the best of but.
Doesn't hurt to state.
Well, right, and we're talking about policies and making sure when things are in a policy, people can look at and we can point to. As well.
I don't know if I feel complete copy of all of the policies. But this is like we can give you some of the things.
And then I think if I remember right, I don't have my little glasses with me today, so it's terrible to find them for our next meeting, but, is there want to have any discussion on like master keys or anything like that? Is there anything the board wants to discuss about today, or would that be like in our policies? How do we feel?
So that'll be part of the building access policy. So you'll take a look at that and then you guys.
Figure it out. Okay, beautiful.
Really, no one should be access to my office less than ever. Righteous reason.
Not also.
Okay, we can put that in our policy then. Okay. Any other things the board wants to discuss on this memo? We don't have enough time, but with the other, so, then for this meeting, then I will entertain, a motion to adjourn if there's no other discussion.
Kurt, second.
All right, thank you. Supported by Kurt. All in favor? Aye. All right, motion carries. We'll have a short 10-minute break and then we'll be back in here for the next meeting, the regular board meeting that will commence at 7. Okay, sure.